Okay, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the second day of talks at the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, hosted by Manifesto Gallery for the institutional debut of Sebas Velasco. My name is Charlotte Pyatt. I am the manager of Sebas Velasco and the producer of this event. Part of my wider work is operating as an expert in culture and sustainability. So I do a lot of work with organizations, institutions, brands, and artists to align creative projects with social and environmental themes. The work is essentially about enhancing the role of art as a vital bridge to action and reconnection. It's something that we've tried to underpin for a lot of the programming for The Morning Will Change Everything. How do we go beyond just an exhibition of paintings? How do we include other disciplines? How do we include other voices, both local and international, to promote more of a cultural exchange? To that end, let me introduce my panel. We have curator Saša Bogojev, who is probably most well known for his contributions to Juxtapose magazine over the last 10 years, and more recently, maybe the last 5 years, has curated over 40 international exhibitions. Artist Bojan Stojčić, who was born here in Bosnia and Herzegovina and graduated from the Academy of Fine Arts. His poetic and humorous interventions can be found in Human Space, as well as notable collections across the world. And finally, the director of the History Museum, Elma Hašimbegović, who was also born in Sarajevo, and since 2013 has been working to implement new strategies and policies to enhance education and constructive dialogues within the museum. So yesterday we heard Mark, Adna, and Sebas discussing representation by warming the grey. Today we discuss breaking isolation through these three artistic dimensions: curator, artist, and director. I thought we could have a more informal conversation that was more experiential, your experience in each of these disciplines, and we could explore what breaking isolation really means through a conversation on tradition, perspective, and economies. Maybe since we're in the History Museum, Elma, we can start with you with some of the challenges you might face and what breaking isolation might mean in your role here.
Okay, thank you for introduction. I don't know, I don't feel very comfortable by being introduced only as a director. I believe that I'm much more than that, but okay, today I'm sitting in the shoes of a director, but also as a curator and historian and museum professional for more than 20 years. So being curator too, never been an artist, that's true.
There's still time.
Yeah, been at the museum for more than 20 years, last 13 years being responsible of running this institution and facing a lot of challenges with this job. Probably I won't be here if the situation in society and political environment in Bosnia and Herzegovina is different, because as many of you know, I think at least the locals, the institution itself is one of these abandoned institutions by the system and by the politics. That means that all 7 of us, including History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina, have been working last 30 years without any support from the state. So we were a museum that was established in 1945 as the museum, as a serious state museum, at that time Museum of the Second World War, and it served the politics and the system and its mission for more than 50 years. But then since 1995, since Dayton, since new Bosnia and Herzegovina has been raised, culture or state cultural institutions stayed on the margins, stay isolated in that way. And this is our reality and the main challenge, in fact, the state institutions are facing in this society. So this is the museum that has been, not just to make it very precise, this is the museum that has not been funded for 30 years, even being the state institution. But if we are talking about challenges, yeah, this is the main challenge of our work. I mean, all these years, but I would like to, in fact, talk more about how we use these challenges and difficulties in our as our advantage, and that's exactly why we are sitting here, having this exhibition and probably having this conversation, which would not be maybe easily organized in other places. You, as a producer of the exhibition, know maybe the best how, in fact, the communication and everything around it went so easily and well. And I think that's because we are enjoying a lot of freedom of doing things, and we didn't have so much administration and so much bureaucracy and saying you, okay, we will think about it and come in 5 years and we will think about having exhibition here, or who is Sebas Velasco, why would he be present here at the History Museum of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we would have probably many more questions and many more obstacles in having this exhibition here. But I mean, I just use this example as a very concrete example how we, in fact, managed to work. And also having international exhibitions here is also telling a lot about, I mean, this particular exhibition is telling a lot also about our strategies of work. And this is exactly the strategy that we are going beyond like this local society, beyond beyond the isolation, obviously, and working a lot internationally.
And Bojan, as an artist who grew up here, what was your experience? How easy did you find your practice locally versus globally, as I know you also work on a lot of international projects?
I guess there's a huge gap, but I think I find this gap poetic and liberating. And as I'm considered as the other, European other, I think taking my agency through art is kind of my political way of being. And after finding ways, it takes years to bridge this gap, to kind of build bridges within different environments. But once that is done, it kind of gives you even more agency than you would expect. Being based in Sarajevo, being based in Bosnia, and trying to intervene into different environments outside.
I imagine the nature of your work forms a bridge in itself as well, being quite humorous and poetic.
Well, I think that is very common for Bosnian artists to use humor. And I think the humor is a very powerful tool that is kind of, maybe a lot of contemporary art lacks it. But I think when used properly, humor can be very dangerous and very powerful tool. And I think it's very kind of Bosnian thing to use humor in daily life and in art itself.
Do you find the reception to be different, like locally compared to globally?
I think so. Maybe this here is everything here is very intimate. Everything is very emotional. But only on the outside, in the outside world, I can really like see my work through different eyes, and kind of see new layers, new registers of it.
And Saša, for you, you've been working in and around art for 15, 20 years now. And while you're 15, while you're curating now, you've done a number of different things. And I know that for your practice, you're particularly dedicated to creating awareness for emerging artists, which I think is another variation of breaking isolation. Is that an intentional thing you continue to do, or is that where you just tend to find the talent that you like or underrepresented talent? What's motivating those decisions for you?
I think it kind of naturally evolved, and I must say, hearing them two saying about what they're doing, I have massive respect for what you're doing with the institution and being an artist from here in the region and creating a voice globally. I sort of feel like an outsider here because I winged my way into what I'm doing. It kind of just, in a way, happened to me. It happened out of passion, and obviously something makes it worth. But in the same way, what you mentioned with working with emerging artists, it also sort of evolved by itself. It wasn't something that I consciously made a decision at some point. It just, where I feel more at home, working with artists that I see some quality in them, and I want to, if I have an opportunity to have a spotlight, whether through when I was contributing to the magazine or later when I'm curating a show, if I have a chance to put a spotlight on them, on that work, which I personally believe in for whatever reason, and then what happens from that, it's not under my control, but this is why I'm doing it, because it just feels satisfying for someone who's coming. I'm from Rijeka, so sort of similar region, so I kind of know how it feels to be out of that spotlight, and you're looking out in the world and everything looks great and everything works for everyone and it's super easy. You just do your thing and then you get the success which you desire. It's not really like that, obviously, but this is kind of the vision you have looking from the outskirts. So this is why I always have a preference towards, let's say, outsiders in that sense, someone who's didn't get that opportunity, the first chance yet, or is coming from a region that it's also not, it's frequently overlooked. So often in my exhibitions I have artists from Australia, for example, which is a region that maybe economically is doing well, but in a global art scene is quite overlooked because it's just distant, it's just so far away. I also tend obviously to include artists from my region, from here, from the Balkans, former Yugoslavia, Croatia. And yeah, it's personally satisfying to see if I do something like that and then things start rolling for this person, if it's even a little or if it's in a big way, it's just satisfying in that way.
I wonder practically for your exhibitions whether you have in mind a juxtaposition of both established and emerging as a way of creating more success or attention for a show.
Yeah, I tried consciously. With some time, I realized that that's a formula that kind of works, because over time I build a relationship with artists that created their careers and they're maybe now more established and have certain following and have certain amount of attention. And then I have them together in a show with a student that just finished academy in Zagreb or somewhere in the world who never showed internationally. And I kind of, hijack that attention of this bigger name for this. And it's usually, from my experience working with artists, they're more than happy to do that. They're usually pleased. I mean, they've been in those shoes years ago. They know what these artists are going through. So they want to do that. They want to share that spotlight with them. And it kind of works, because it kind of, in that sense, when you put, I often regularly almost curate group shows. And what I do is mostly focused on figurative painting. So when you have a group exhibitions and one painting or 2-3 paintings are from some names that you might heard of, but then other paintings are from someone else, but they're nicely working together. You cannot, without knowing the names, you cannot tell that this is a very different range of quality. It kind of lifts everyone up in that sense.
I think the movement's very interesting. I think it's very dynamic, as you say. And Elma, I know particularly for you, you spend a lot of time traveling as a representative of the museum. I wonder how you feel that impacts going as an ambassador for your institution, how you are received in other places. Like, do you feel like it moves the needle? Does that sense of cultural exchange in other countries have an impact locally?
Yeah, I like traveling, and I don't find it really as a job, as it in fact it is. But yeah, it's a part of your also like life preferences and of your soul that we discussed the other night. In fact, you mentioned that you are like feeling respect for us because you are doing your job out of passion. Yeah. We are also very passionate about. I mean, just want to express this because we are talking. You are seeing your role really as a drive force which needs to move this society in different direction, to shaken it from all sides. We are talking about local context which is really poisoned and intoxicated by politics, by national politics, if you want, by national culture. So you are seeing your position and your freedom as a mission, like let's use it as much as you can in order to achieve something or to help artists in this case, or show different narrative if you are talking about history from those that would be wanted or preferred at the moment. in the Bosnian society. So yeah, you see it really as a mission, as a passion that you are working from. And this international dimension of it is a way how we go out of this triangle or out of this intoxicated, poison society in political terms. So going outside, going abroad is the way how we are trying, in fact, to work and act, and not only me being traveling, but also bringing other people, bringing colleagues from the museum to see something different, to get educated abroad in different international conferences, seminars, education, etc. But also trying to work a lot internationally and to advocate for the museum, because it's not the first time that I've been invited to talk about not only about conflicts, because this is our, let's say, expertise, but also how to deal with the museum in crisis or crisis times, and how one museum can cope and culture can cope in times of crisis, economic crisis. Because we managed to prove that it's possible to work without funding or without real sustainable support from the state. And sometimes you are presenting as a kind of expert talking how to work with it, and it's really not in fact the case that I didn't study economics or something similar to that I could teach about it or give presentations, but we are talking again how you develop different strategies of survival, basically, and how you cope with the crisis, and in order to create something more positive for your society, but also to move it or to put it forward internationally. So yeah, I feel very much as ambassador of Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the museum, and traveling abroad to different conferences, but always using it as an opportunity to make new partnerships and make new projects that would happen here or would be organized here, and in that way developing really the big network of international partners, and if you are talking about artists in this case. I mean, art is something that we are very much using as a tool when talking about past, because this is the museum that has been established to deal with the war. First, Second World War, last 25 years we deliberately chosen to deal with the 90s war, so we are dealing with quite difficult topics. But then we use also art as a tool to talk about it in a more sensitive way and more inviting way to approach the audience, to approach with young people, etc.
I think you're right about a lot of creative strategies that we hear now for arts funding at large, you know, like beyond Bosnia and Herzegovina. I wonder how that impacts the local art buying economy here, or appreciation of art here. Is there much of an infrastructure for it? I mean, from what I understand, having spoken to a lot of makers and producers in the area, when we speak of arts and culture, it tends to be a more cultural heritage, like a past perspective, as you say, like whether it's a reflection on the war or if it's more recipes, tradition, dance. Do you have much of a view on what art collecting and buying, selling in the region is like? What is your experience?
I think to put it as one region is kind of, it's not true, because even though we are neighboring countries, we're actually completely different economical universes. And basically, infrastructure, art market infrastructure in Bosnia and Herzegovina doesn't really exist. Maybe there are a few exceptions, but it doesn't exist. While in Croatia there are many private galleries that are kind of earning through selling. Belgrade is full of this, especially through the last 5-6 years. It just started growing. Here we don't have that, and I think. But once one colleague from Croatia, he explained it really nice, that everything southeast of Vienna is actually every artwork is liberated of its financial value. And I find that very poetic, actually. Now, when you start making art, you don't even see it as a product, because there's no one to buy it, that product. So basically, you don't have to spend some time, too much time in these thoughts. That's my approach. And you can focus on being sharper politically, and because there is no art market, or Dayton reality put the institutions in a position that they cannot produce contemporary art on a big scale, or on a frequent scale, you are forced to kind of invent new ways. But I find it very liberating. For example, I was curating a show, student show with the Academy of Fine Arts last year. We called it Wildflowers of Palestine, and I knew that at that point that this show couldn't be curated or produced in Berlin or in New York or any big financial or art center. We could do it here because there's no money in it. And we could speak openly about it, and we could 20 young people produced some works about the current topic, world topic. And for me, that was something very significant. And that could only happen because no money was involved.
Right.
But to kind of find new ways, I think we made a great example last year when we co-curated a show in Berlin, Manifesto Gallery, and myself, and Ambasada, the association in Berlin, we co-curated a show in NGBK in Berlin, where we found finances to produce a show that included production of 12 new art pieces, which involved then extensive public program of 2 months, which then turned into a book publication of 400 pages. And all this material and all this knowledge and all these things came from Berlin then to Gallery Manifesto to kind of show what we did in Berlin, but also to include these people from Berlin here. And that was the way of, I saw it as kind of our way of bypassing the system. We used the production money of European funds for a show to be produced in Berlin. But then Manifesto found some additional money to kind of use these already produced works just to transport it here, to get these people here. Many of them were first time exhibiting in Sarajevo. It was very important for them. And I think that was a great example of how we kind of tricked the system to kind of work in our advantage.
For anyone here who doesn't know, Gallery Manifesto are a local hybrid platform working with artists to enhance cultural appreciation and respect. You should definitely go and visit if you haven't already. But where they're looking to focus this emergence of a new market, it makes me think of around the time that we met, kind of like that pre-2008 period for the emergence of what would have been the graffiti and street art market. It kind of recalls this, how there is an energy for something that suddenly then mobilizes into something that's a little more organized, and suddenly the money appears, or the appreciation appears, or the infrastructure through private galleries, institution appears. Maybe you could talk a little about your experience at that time.
Well, all I was hearing here, I could identify with these stories, this thing of the lack of finance being liberating and having the freedom. I noticed that also in Croatia with some artists that I worked with, whose work is just focused on the artists expressing themselves and creating work, not having big hopes, not calculating too much about where they can get with that work. I find that it's always kind of double in that sense, because I'm completely now going into another thing. But anyways, now with the globalized world, everywhere in the world, artists are looking everywhere else, and you look on Instagram, you see other people having success, and you kind of feel that there is a possibility for that success. And that was also happening in those days when the whole, let's say, street art scene was growing. But then, like with everything else, I guess the law of entropy, in a way, once it gets too big, it sort of implodes, and then it settles on little particles that are then the little fertile ground for the new things to rise from it. I personally, with time, with that growing out of what I was feeling that I can identify with, swerved completely to not completely something else, but more towards painting as a medium. And I completely lost my thought now.
Emerging markets.
Emerging
with little
market.
to no cultural infrastructure, gives a lot of liberated perspectives. Artists are very free to do what they want, but we've kind of seen this pattern emerge at another point with graffiti emerging in the 80s and then just doing what it does, no appreciation, no money, but then there's always a turning point. When there are enough people, as you say, entropy does what it does, and then suddenly fertile ground.
Yeah, I think in this region, because these are all quite young societies, young economies, like everywhere else in the world, people that have affinity towards art are usually looking towards local galleries, local museum, local artists. It's something that's easier to identify with, something that is more familiar. And then that takes some time for them, for those appreciators, let's call them collectors, it takes some time for them to start looking further and become part of, let's say, a global scene and look further. But then with that also promote their local artists further away. I've noticed that's the case in Croatia, although my journey started right away internationally. So I was working first internationally through writing, contributing to the magazine, and then curation. It was all international. And then at one point I started actually realizing I can look around me, I can look around where I am in Croatia, but then I also moved to Holland, so that didn't last for that long. So this dynamic also exists there, and I see this moment that Bojan was talking about now in Croatia. There's a gallery Trotar in Zagreb, there's gallery Pula in Pula. There's these galleries that are for doing certain things, and it's kind of establishing this new scene, which 5 years ago pretty much didn't exist. But this movement is slowly happening. There's more and more people getting attached to that scene, whether they just enjoy it, whether they're also producing work, whether they have interest in maybe owning, contributing in some way. So yeah, it's a long-term process, definitely for that, yeah.
I'd love to know if there are any questions from anyone before I keep talking.
Think about questions we'll ask.
Yeah,
again.
we're coming back. The idea of fertile ground and momentum building, do you have a vision for what is the next year, the next 5 years for the museum that does look more positive, or do you see yourself stuck in this monotonous financial problem with the museum?
We are not stuck. I mean, don't misunderstand us. I don't want to send this message that we are stuck. In fact, we are progressing thanks to, I don't say lack of funding, but lack of support, or lack of control, or the freedom that we are enjoying, that Bojan and me are talking. You know, I feel like that we have two groups of those who are talking about freedom and liberation and liberating, I don't know, creative energy and more structured market. So we are very much, I mean, me or the museum is enjoying very much the freedom that we have. And we found a way. So if even we are talking about, finances as obstacle, we are finding our ways, and we are, I think also Bojan can be seen and considered very successful artist. I think that he really went to the market, and he's one of the artists who could teach and lecture about how to. I mean, I think that's a maybe general opinion about you of being really successful in it. So you can share how you are doing it, and how you are making it. And as we can also talk about how we are successfully doing different projects and in fact doing what we have just thanks to the, I mean, we are not private museum, we are not private gallery, so we are state museum that is supposed to share and to be used as one of the tools for state narratives, for state building narratives, so to be very political. And we are, but not very opposite from what is politics today and what is memory politics today. So I think that we don't want this to change. And I don't want to, I mean, when the money comes one day, this will be probably lost. So we are not seeking for this arranged, structured system as a perfect model for the future. I cannot promote also this one as a successful. It is a successful model, but we cannot really promote it actively as this is a model. So you should have a state institution, state museum in ruins, and that is perfectly fine, and that we are sitting in the cold gallery and we are freezing here, that it's something normal. It's not. But we are sitting here. And it's not that romantic. I mean, I would not really call it poetic, but I would see it really as something which is
No, I
which
think
is in our
it points
side.
to the complexity, as you say, of what breaking isolation really means. Like, it's one way, but should it choose, you would introduce a whole nother load of problems, I'm sure, and that must go for director, historian,
So I would like in 5 years
artist.
that we have warmer space, that we can sit more comfortably here, and that you get to the museum with not broken stairs, but regular stairs, and yeah. And we would take care of the programs and try to bring as much as possible and to be dynamic as we are.
I feel like it's a really good place to leave it, unless anyone has any questions. Then thank you so much to Elma, Bojan and Saša for joining us.
And thank you, Charlie.
Good night.